rejected and alone at midnight, until a 400-year-old vampire lord took her into his castle. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. The clock struck midnight, and in the dim light of the alley, Emma found herself alone again. Another night spent wandering the streets of the city she had called home for the last few years. But tonight, something felt different. It wasn't the cold wind or the darkened streets. It was the feeling that everything she had ever known was slipping away. Rejected by her friends, abandoned by her family, Emma was left with only the street lights and the echo of her own footsteps for company. Her heart ached as she replayed the painful words of her ex-boyfriend in her mind. "You're not good enough," he had said, his cold voice searing into her soul. As she walked further into the night, the weight of the world seemed to press down on her. The promises she had once believed in felt like distant memories. She wasn't sure where she was going, but she knew she couldn't go back. She needed something, anything, to change the course of her life. Just then, she stumbled upon a large iron gate, its towering presence sending a chill down her spine. The gate creaked open, as if inviting her in. It was strange, yet Emma felt an unexplainable pull. Without thinking, she stepped inside. The castle loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the night sky. It seemed alive, watching her, as if it had been waiting for her all along. She hesitated, but curiosity pushed her forward. The moment she crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. The coldness that had clung to her like a second skin seemed to dissipate. She wasn't sure what to expect, but what she found was beyond anything she could have imagined. A man stood in front of her, his presence commanding and mysterious. His eyes, glowing with an amber light, locked onto hers. He was tall, dressed in a dark, regal suit that looked as though it had been made for royalty. His gaze was intense, almost as if he could see into her very soul. "Who are you?" His voice was smooth, yet it held an undeniable power. Emma froze. She had no words. The man took a step forward, his every movement graceful, almost predatory. "You've come at a most interesting time," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Emma didn't know why, but she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. He wasn't just any man, he was something more. "I am Lord Victor," he continued, "and you, my dear, have stumbled into my domain." As his words settled in her mind, Emma realized that she had unknowingly walked into the life of someone who had been alive for centuries. She had no idea what was about to happen next, but she felt as if her entire existence was about to change in ways she couldn't yet understand. The air in the castle felt different, heavy with an ancient presence that seemed to pulse through the walls. Emma stood frozen, still unsure of what to do next. Lord Victor's gaze held her captive, his amber eyes glowing with an intensity that both unnerved and intrigued her. He had spoken with such authority, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made her feel like she was part of something much bigger than herself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. Victor finally broke the stillness, his voice low and measured. "You are not like the others," he said, his gaze flickering to her trembling hands. Emma could barely comprehend his words. She felt like a deer caught in the headlights, too scared to move, too confused to speak. The warmth she had felt when stepping into the castle was quickly replaced by a chill. Victor stepped closer, his movements so fluid, they seemed almost unreal. His presence was overwhelming, like a force of nature she couldn't resist. "Come," he commanded gently. "I will show you to your quarters." His words were not a suggestion but a command, and for reasons Emma couldn't explain, she found herself following him. As they walked down the grand corridor, Emma couldn't help but glance around. The castle was nothing like she had imagined. It was vast, with towering ceilings that disappeared into the shadows above. Portraits of stern-looking individuals lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her every step. The air smelled faintly of old wood and something floral, almost sweet. Despite the eerie atmosphere, there was an undeniable beauty to the place. They reached a large set of doors, and Victor opened them with a swift motion. Inside, the room was lavishly furnished, with deep velvet curtains hanging over the windows, their rich color contrasting with the pale stone walls. A grand four-poster bed stood at the center of the room, its canopy draped in black silk. The room seemed to hum with an energy Emma couldn't quite place, and it unsettled her more than she was willing to admit. Victor gestured for her to sit, and she obeyed, her legs feeling weak under her. She had no idea what had brought her here, and she didn't understand why he had taken her in, but there was something about him that made her want to stay. "You must be tired," Victor said, his voice softening. He stepped towards a large wardrobe and pulled out a dark robe, handing it to her. "Change, rest. We will talk more when you are ready." Emma took the robe, her fingers brushing against his as she did. His skin was cool to the touch, like marble, and for a brief moment, she felt as though she had been touched by something otherworldly. As she changed into the robe, she found herself looking at her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her clothes were torn and dirty from her time on the streets, and her hair was a tangled mess. But beneath the grime, she saw a woman who was tired, yes, but also stronger than she had ever felt. She didn't know how, but something about being in this place made her feel different. When she emerged from the room, Victor was sitting in a large armchair, his posture regal and commanding. He looked at her with a small, almost amused smile. "You look better already," he said, "but I can see the doubt in your eyes." He paused, studying her for a moment. "Tell me, Emma, what is it that you seek?" Emma hesitated, the words catching in her throat. What was she seeking? Safety? A way out of the life that had crushed her spirit? Or something more? She finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. I just want to stop feeling lost." Victor's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, Emma saw something human in his eyes. But it was gone just as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold, unyielding presence of the vampire lord she had first encountered. "Lost, are you?" he said, his voice taking on a hint of amusement. "Perhaps you are in the right place, after all." Emma didn't know what to make of his words. She wanted to ask more, but the words felt stuck in her throat. She had no idea what was happening, but there was no denying that her life had just taken a dramatic turn. And as much as she wanted to run, she couldn't bring herself to leave. There was something about Victor, something about this place, that kept her rooted to the spot. "You will stay here for as long as you need," Victor continued. "But be warned, Emma. The longer you remain in my castle, the more you will be drawn into the world I inhabit. And once you are part of it, there is no turning back." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time, Emma understood that whatever she had stumbled into was no ordinary place. She was no longer just a lost girl wandering the streets. She had entered a world of darkness and power, and there was no telling where it would take her. Emma sat in the dimly lit room, her hands nervously gripping the soft fabric of the robe Victor had given her. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of which seemed to make any sense. The castle was vast, its walls adorned with centuries-old tapestries, and the air was thick with a mysterious energy that left her feeling both curious and unsettled. Victor had said she would stay here, but what did that really mean? The longer she stayed, the more she felt herself becoming entangled in his world, a world so far removed from the one she had known. She was no longer just a girl struggling to survive on the streets. She was now in the presence of a vampire lord, a creature of ancient power, and she had no idea what the future held. As she sat in silence, she could hear the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the corridor. The door creaked open, and Victor stepped inside, his tall figure looming in the doorway. His amber eyes glowed faintly in the low light, and Emma felt a chill run down her spine as he crossed the room toward her. "You are still here," he said softly, his voice like a velvet whisper. There was no accusation in his tone, just a simple statement of fact. Emma nodded, unable to find her voice. The truth was, she didn't want to leave. There was something about Victor, his presence, his power, that drew her in, despite the fear that simmered beneath her calm exterior. "You've been through much," Victor continued, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for something hidden. "The world outside has not been kind to you. But here, in my castle, you are safe. For now." Emma swallowed hard. Safe. The word felt foreign to her, almost unreal. She had never truly felt safe, not in the way Victor was suggesting. The streets had always been her home, and they were anything but safe. Yet here, in this strange castle, surrounded by darkness and the unknown, she found a sense of peace she had never known. Why? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Victor raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her question. Why did you bring me here? Why save me? She had to know. She had to understand. Victor's gaze softened, and for the briefest moment, Emma saw a flicker of something in his eyes. A vulnerability she hadn't expected from someone as powerful as him. He moved to the window, looking out over the darkened landscape, his back to her. Because you remind me of someone I lost long ago, he said, his voice barely audible. Emma stood up slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Who? She asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. Victor's hand clenched into a fist at his side, his jaw tightening, as if the memory caused him pain. Her name was Isabella. She was a human, like you. She came to me in a time of need, just as you have. She was different, special, but that was a long time ago. He turned to face her, his eyes darkening with the weight of the memories. I lost her to the very world you were trying to escape, and I will not lose you too. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard stories of vampires and their lost loves, but hearing it from Victor, from someone who had lived for centuries, made the tale feel all the more real. But I'm not her, Emma said softly, her voice shaking. I'm just a girl. A lost girl who doesn't belong here. Victor took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. You are more than you think, he said, his voice low and filled with meaning. You are exactly where you need to be. Emma didn't know how to respond. She wanted to argue, to tell him that she wasn't anything special, that she was just a girl who had been abandoned by the world. But she couldn't. His words had struck a chord deep within her, a part of her that she didn't even know existed. The silence stretched between them once again, heavy and thick. Finally, Victor spoke, breaking the tension. There is much you need to learn, Emma. You are not here just by chance. Your presence in this castle is no coincidence. You are part of something much larger than yourself, something that has been unfolding for centuries. Emma's heart raced as his words sank in. What did he mean? Was there some greater purpose for her being here? What do you want from me? She asked, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her chest. Victor's expression became unreadable, his eyes narrowing slightly. I want you to stay, he said simply. I want you to embrace what you are meant to be. Emma blinked in confusion. What I'm meant to be? Victor nodded, his gaze piercing. Yes, but first, you must understand the nature of the world you have entered. There is no going back once you take this step. The weight of his words pressed down on her like a heavy burden. Emma felt as though she was standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into a darkness she couldn't fully comprehend. But despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, there was a part of her that felt drawn to this world. A part of her that wanted to believe in the possibility of something greater. She nodded slowly, the decision forming in her mind. I'll stay, she said, her voice resolute. Victor's lips curled into a small, approving smile. Good, he said, his voice now softer. Then let us begin. The night stretched on, and Emma knew that her life would never be the same again. She had stepped into a world of darkness, mystery, and power, and she had made the choice to embrace it. What that meant for her future, she couldn't yet know. But as Victor led her deeper into the castle, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous and far more exhilarating than she could ever have imagined. As Victor led Emma deeper into the castle, the cold stone floors seemed to hum beneath her feet. The atmosphere was thick with secrets, and despite the opulent surroundings, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was always just beyond her reach. Victor walked ahead of her, his tall figure blending with the shadows, but Emma couldn't tear her eyes away from him. The way he moved, with such confidence and grace, made her feel both small and insignificant, yet at the same time, there was a strange sense of safety in his presence. She had chosen to stay, and with every passing moment, she was beginning to understand that the decision was not one she would be able to take back. The corridors seemed endless, each one leading them further into the heart of the castle. It was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Ancient, yet alive with an energy that vibrated through the air. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the castle seemed to have a life of its own, as if the walls and floors were watching her every step. "Come," Victor's voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. He stopped before a large wooden door, its intricate carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. With a swift motion, he pushed it open and gestured for Emma to enter. The room was vast, its high ceilings lined with bookshelves that reached up to the shadows above. The walls were adorned with paintings of old, each one depicting figures dressed in elaborate clothing, their eyes staring down at her with an unsettling intensity. A large desk sat at the center of the room, cluttered with scrolls and ancient tomes, while a roaring fire crackled in the stone hearth. Victor walked toward the desk and motioned for Emma to sit in the chair beside it. "You are here to learn," he said, his voice firm. "The world you thought you knew no longer applies. There are forces at work here that you cannot yet understand." Emma nodded, her mind racing. She was overwhelmed, but she couldn't deny the allure of what Victor was offering. This was a world she had only ever dreamed of, a place where power and mystery intertwined, and she was being pulled into its depths whether she was ready or not. "I don't know what I'm supposed to learn," Emma said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Victor's amber eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite decipher. "You will," he replied. "But first, you must understand the nature of what you are dealing with. This castle, this world, it is a reflection of the power I wield. It is not simply a place for the living, but for the dead, the immortal, the forgotten." Victor's voice grew softer, his eyes distant as if he was reliving a memory long buried. "I have lived for centuries, and in that time, I have seen kingdoms rise and fall, seen friends become enemies, and watched as time erases all but the memories we choose to keep. But there are forces beyond time, beyond death, that govern this world, and they are always watching." Emma shivered, unsure if it was the cold or the weight of his words that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor turned to face her, his eyes narrowing as he regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and something darker. "I want you to understand that you are more than just a girl wandering through my castle," he said. "You have a purpose here, Emma. You were brought here for a reason, and that reason will become clear soon enough." Emma opened her mouth to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. She didn't know what to ask, didn't know where to begin. "You are not the first to be chosen," Victor continued, his tone laced with a hint of sorrow. "There have been others before you, girls like you who came to me in times of need, searching for something they could not name. Some stayed, others left, never to be seen again." Emma's heart raced, her breath caught in her chest. She couldn't help but wonder what had happened to those other girls, and why she had been chosen. "But you," Victor said, his gaze locking with hers, "are different. You will not leave until your purpose is fulfilled." Emma felt a chill spread through her, the weight of his words sinking in. She was trapped here, whether she liked it or not. She had made the choice to stay, but now, she wasn't sure if she had made a mistake. "What is my purpose?" she asked, her voice trembling. Victor smiled, but it wasn't a smile of reassurance. It was something darker, more cryptic. "That, my dear Emma, is for you to discover. And it will not be easy. But I promise you this. Your life will never be the same again." The fire crackled behind them, and the room seemed to grow colder. Emma sat in silence, her mind spinning with questions she didn't know how to ask. She had stepped into a world where nothing was as it seemed, and she had no idea what her place in it would be. But one thing was certain. She was here now, and there was no turning back. The days that followed were like nothing Emma had ever experienced. She spent most of her time in the castle, drifting from room to room, trying to adjust to her new reality. Victor was still an enigma, his presence commanding but distant, as if he was always watching her, waiting for something. He had told her she was there for a reason, but so far, no answers had come. The grand halls of the castle were both beautiful and suffocating, filled with portraits of people she didn't recognize, all of them staring down at her with cold, unblinking eyes. She felt like a trespasser in a place that didn't want her, yet at the same time, she couldn't seem to leave. Victor had offered her safety, but it was clear there was a price. The longer she stayed, the more she realized that the world she had entered was not one that could easily be understood. The castle was filled with strange sounds at night. Whispers in the corridors, the rustling of unseen wings, the feeling of being watched. One evening, Victor summoned her to the library, a room even more vast than the others she had seen. The walls were lined with books that stretched all the way to the ceiling, and the air smelled of old parchment and dust. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room. Victor stood by the fire, his expression unreadable. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice low. "What is it that troubles you?" Emma hesitated, unsure of how to answer. She wanted to ask him about her purpose, about why she was really here, but there was a part of her that was afraid of the answer. "I just don't understand," she said finally. "Why me? Why did you bring me here?" Victor turned to face her, his amber eyes glowing in the dim light. "You are here because I have chosen you," he said simply. "You remind me of someone I once knew, a woman who, like you, was lost and seeking something she couldn't name. But she was not as strong as you are, Emma. You have a strength in you that she did not possess." Emma felt a chill run through her at his words. "Who was she?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Victor's expression darkened, and for a moment, he was silent. "Her name was Isabella," he said, his voice tinged with something that sounded like regret. "She was the one who taught me the true meaning of loss. She was a human, like you, and for a time, we were connected. But the world is not kind to those like us, Emma, and it took her away from me." Emma swallowed hard, her heart aching at the sadness in his voice. She could see the pain in his eyes, the weight of centuries of loss. She wanted to reach out to him, to offer some comfort, but something told her that this pain ran deeper than she could understand. "What happened to her?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Victor closed his eyes for a moment, as if the memory was too painful to relive. "She was taken from me by the same forces that govern this world," he said quietly. "The world of immortals is a dangerous one, filled with betrayal and darkness. She didn't survive it. But you, Emma, you have the potential to." His words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Emma felt a mix of fear and curiosity, unsure of what to believe. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor turned back to the fire, his gaze distant. "I have lived for centuries, Emma," he said slowly. "And in all that time, I have seen countless lives destroyed, countless souls lost to the darkness. But you, there is something different about you. You were brought here for a reason. And if you embrace the path before you, you will be more powerful than you can possibly imagine." Emma's heart raced at his words. The thought of power, of being someone capable of controlling her own fate, was both thrilling and terrifying. But she didn't know if she was ready for that kind of responsibility. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. Victor turned to face her once again, his eyes burning with intensity. "I want you to accept who you are," he said. "You are no longer the girl who walked the streets, lost and alone. You are someone destined for greatness, Emma. But you must first accept that you are no longer in control of your fate. This world, this castle, has its own rules, and you must learn to live by them." Emma felt a surge of panic rise in her chest. What was he asking her to do? Was she ready to give up her past, her identity, and embrace a life she couldn't fully understand? She opened her mouth to speak, but Victor held up a hand, silencing her. "Do not fear, Emma," he said, his voice softening. "I will guide you, but you must trust me." Emma's mind spun with questions, but one thing was clear: the life she had known was gone. And in its place, something new, something powerful, was rising within her. She didn't know if she was ready, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The choice had been made, and there was no going back. "I'll trust you," she said quietly, her voice filled with determination. Victor smiled, his amber eyes glowing brighter. "Good," he said, his voice filled with approval. "Then let us begin." The days that followed were nothing like the life Emma had known. The castle had become her new reality, its walls a constant reminder that she was no longer in control. She spent her time wandering the vast, quiet halls, still unsure of what Victor truly wanted from her. Despite his words, despite the promise of power, she couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at her. The deeper she delved into this world, the more questions arose, but Victor remained elusive, offering no answers. His presence was everywhere, in the silence of the castle, in the weight of his gaze, but when she sought him out for guidance, he was always just out of reach. It was as if he was watching her from the shadows, waiting for her to make the next move. One evening, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, Emma found herself once again in the library, the only place where she felt somewhat at peace. The shelves stretched endlessly around her, filled with books she couldn't even begin to understand. She ran her fingers along the spines of the ancient volumes, their leather covers worn with age. She was lost in thought when she heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching. She turned, expecting to see one of the servants, but instead, Victor appeared in the doorway. His presence seemed to fill the room, the air thick with the weight of his power. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Victor stood silently, his amber eyes watching her, studying her with an intensity that made Emma feel both exposed and protected. "You are learning," Victor said finally, his voice deep and steady. "But there is much more for you to understand." Emma nodded, unsure of what he meant. She had been trying, but there were still so many pieces of the puzzle that didn't fit together. "What do I need to understand?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Victor stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You need to understand what it means to live in this world, Emma," he said softly. "This world is not just about power. It is about survival. It is about learning to control what you are, to use it to your advantage." Emma's heart raced. The words seemed to carry an unspoken weight, a promise of something more, something dangerous. "But I don't want power," she said quickly. "I just want to find my place here." Victor's eyes darkened, his expression hardening. "You don't understand, Emma. You have already been given power. Whether you want it or not, it is part of you now, and you will need to learn how to wield it if you are to survive." Emma felt a chill run through her at his words. She had always thought of herself as weak, insignificant. The idea of having power, real power, seemed impossible. But Victor was right. She had already seen glimpses of it. The way people moved out of her path when she walked through the halls. The way her presence seemed to command attention without her even trying. It terrified her. "What do you want from me?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Victor's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was no warmth in it. "I want you to embrace who you are, Emma. To stop running from the power that lies within you." He paused, his gaze shifting to the shadows that seemed to pulse around them. "There are those who will try to use you, to control you. But you must learn to protect yourself, to protect what you are becoming." Emma shook her head, confusion and fear swirling within her. "But I don't even know who I am anymore," she whispered. Victor's eyes softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a hint of something close to sympathy in his gaze. "You are exactly who you need to be," he said quietly, "and you will become more than you can imagine." Emma wanted to argue, to tell him that she was just a lost girl, struggling to find her place in a world that felt so alien. But the words stuck in her throat. She didn't know who she was becoming, but she could feel the change inside her. The power that Victor spoke of was real, and it was growing, pulsing within her like a heartbeat she couldn't control. Victor stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently grasp her chin, lifting her face to meet his gaze. "Trust me, Emma," he murmured, his voice almost tender. "You are not weak. You are stronger than you think." The heat of his touch sent a jolt of electricity through her, and for a moment, she almost believed him. She wanted to believe him. "I don't know if I can do this," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm ready." Victor's smile deepened, but it was tinged with something darker, something that Emma couldn't quite place. "You don't have to be ready," he said. "You already are." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she realized that there was no going back. She was already part of this world, part of something much larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And there was no turning back now. Victor stepped away, his eyes locking with hers one last time. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and commanding, "you will begin your training. We will unlock what lies within you." Emma stood frozen, her mind spinning with fear and anticipation. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had changed forever, and there was no escape from the path she had chosen. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of footsteps echoing through the castle halls. It was still early, the light from the rising sun filtering through the tall windows of her room, casting a soft glow on the stone walls. She had barely slept, her mind spinning with the events of the previous night. Victor's words haunted her. "You are not weak. You are stronger than you think." She wasn't sure if she believed him, but deep down, she knew something was changing inside her. There was power there, pulsing beneath her skin, a force she couldn't yet control, but could feel in every breath she took. As she dressed, she couldn't help but notice the way her clothes fit her differently, how the world seemed to move just slightly out of sync, as if the rules were shifting. Her reflection in the mirror looked the same, but she didn't feel the same. When she stepped into the hall, Victor was waiting for her. His usual cold, calculating expression softened for a moment when he saw her, his amber eyes scanning her with a mixture of approval and something more. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it that told Emma he was not asking out of politeness. It was a command, and she had no choice but to follow it. She nodded, her heart racing in her chest. "Yes," she said, the word barely a whisper. Victor didn't waste time. He led her through the winding corridors of the castle, their footsteps echoing off the ancient stone walls. They passed through grand halls, into a section of the castle Emma hadn't seen before, a long, narrow hallway with torches flickering on the walls. The air felt heavier here, charged with an energy Emma couldn't explain. Victor stopped in front of a large, iron-bound door, its surface carved with intricate symbols. "This is where it begins," Victor said, his voice low. "Inside, you will learn to control what you have inside of you. The first lesson is about acceptance." He turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room beyond was unlike anything Emma had ever imagined. It was vast, the ceiling towering above them, draped with dark velvet curtains that seemed to absorb the light. The center of the room was occupied by a large stone circle, the floor beneath it marked with ancient symbols that seemed to glow faintly. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward, drawn to the circle, the air around her humming with energy. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice trembling. Victor looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if gauging her reaction. "This is the Chamber of Awakening," he said. "Here, you will begin to unlock the power within you. The first step is to connect with it, to embrace it, not as a curse, but as a part of you." Emma stepped closer to the circle, her feet moving almost of their own accord. She didn't understand what he meant, but she could feel the pull, the magnetic force drawing her in. She stood at the edge of the circle, her breath shallow, and Victor gestured for her to step inside. "Trust yourself," he said softly. "You are ready." Emma hesitated for only a moment before she stepped into the circle. The moment her feet touched the stone, a surge of energy shot through her, and she gasped, her body trembling with the intensity of it. It was like nothing she had ever felt before, a fire running through her veins, a power that had always been inside her, just waiting to be unleashed. She closed her eyes, focusing on the sensation, trying to understand it, control it. But it was wild, untamed, and it scared her. "Focus, Emma." Victor's voice cut through the storm inside her mind. "Control it." She gritted her teeth, trying to block out the overwhelming sensation. It was like trying to hold back a flood, but with each passing second, the power inside her grew stronger, more insistent. She could feel it in her chest, in her hands, in her very bones. Victor's voice was steady, but there was a hint of urgency now. "You must take hold of it, or it will consume you. You cannot let fear control you. You have the strength to guide it." Emma's mind flashed to everything she had been through, the rejection, the loneliness, the pain of her past. She had been weak, always letting fear control her. But this was different. She had a choice now. She could choose to face the power, or let it destroy her. With a deep breath, Emma focused. She pictured the power not as something to fear, but as a part of herself, something she could shape, something she could use. Slowly, she felt the energy begin to settle, to form, and for the first time, she felt a sense of control. She opened her eyes, her breath steady, and looked at Victor. He was watching her closely, his expression unreadable. "Well done," he said, his voice a mixture of approval and something else. "You are beginning to understand." Emma felt a rush of pride, but it was tempered by the realization of what she had just done. She wasn't just learning to control power. She was changing. The person she had been, the girl who had wandered the streets, unsure of her place in the world, was gone. And in her place was someone else, someone who was starting to understand the world she had entered. "What's next?" she asked, her voice steady now, no longer trembling. Victor's lips curled into a slight smile. Next, he said, we see just how far you can go. The days that followed Emma's first taste of power were a blur of intense training, strange rituals, and encounters with forces she had no name for. Victor guided her, but with every lesson, every test, it became clear that this new world she had stepped into was nothing like the one she had known. She wasn't just learning to control her power, she was becoming part of something larger, something dangerous. One morning, Victor led her to a new room, one she had never seen before. It was located deep within the castle, down long corridors, far from the main hall she had grown used to. The room was simple, almost bare, with only a stone pedestal at the center. Victor stood beside her, his gaze steady as he observed her reaction. This is where your true test begins, he said, his voice carrying an edge she hadn't heard before. Up until now, you have been learning to control the power inside you. But now, we see if you have the strength to master it. You will be facing an opponent, Emma, and you will need to use everything you have learned. Emma's stomach tightened. She had known that training would eventually lead to something like this, but she wasn't prepared for it. She had never fought anyone before, let alone faced down whatever creatures or challenges Victor had in mind for her. An opponent? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor's expression softened for a moment, but there was no warmth in it. Yes, someone who will push you beyond your limits. Someone who will challenge everything you think you know about yourself and this power. He stepped back, motioning for her to approach the pedestal. You will fight for your place here, Emma, and you will fight for what you are becoming. She nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't understand everything about this new world she had entered, but one thing was clear, she was part of it now. There was no turning back. Slowly, she walked to the center of the room, her mind racing. What was Victor asking her to do? Who was she going to face? As if answering her unspoken question, a figure materialized in front of her, seemingly out of thin air. Emma gasped, her body instinctively stepping back. The figure before her was tall, cloaked in shadows, its face obscured by a hood. It didn't speak, but she could feel its presence pressing in on her, its energy like a weight on her shoulders. Victor stood off to the side, watching her, his expression unreadable. This is your test, he said. You will fight this shadow, this manifestation of your fear, of the darkness within you. It will push you, it will hurt you. But if you can conquer it, you will have proven that you are ready to wield the power you possess. Emma swallowed hard, her mind swirling with doubt. She didn't know if she could do this. She didn't know if she was strong enough. But Victor's words echoed in her mind. You are stronger than you think. With a deep breath, she focused on the figure before her. She couldn't let fear control her, not now. She had to find the strength within herself to fight. The figure moved, its movements swift and fluid, faster than Emma could react. Before she could raise her hand to defend herself, it struck, a blow that sent her stumbling back. Pain shot through her side, and she gasped, feeling the sharp sting of the wound. But instead of retreating, instead of letting the pain overwhelm her, Emma drew on the power inside her, focusing on the heat that pulsed beneath her skin. She extended her hand, and with it, a wave of energy surged forward, crashing into the shadowy figure. For a moment, it faltered, but it quickly recovered, its eyes glowing with an intensity that mirrored her own power. The figure attacked again, but this time, Emma was ready. She focused, her mind clearing, and with every strike, she pushed back with equal force. The room seemed to grow darker, the shadows around her deepening, but she didn't let it scare her. She was no longer the weak girl who had wandered into this castle looking for safety. She was learning to control her power, and she would not let it consume her. With one final push, Emma gathered all of her energy and launched it at the figure, a brilliant burst of light that enveloped the room. The shadow screamed, its form disintegrating into the air as the light from Emma's power pushed it away. Silence filled the room, and Emma stood, panting, her heart racing. She felt as if every muscle in her body had been tested, every ounce of strength she had pulled to its limit. But she had won. The figure was gone. Victor stepped forward, his eyes glowing with approval. Well done, he said. You have proven that you can face the darkness within you and conquer it. You are ready for what comes next. Emma sank to her knees, exhausted but relieved. She had done it. She had faced the fear, the unknown, and emerged stronger for it. The power that had once terrified her was now something she could control. Victor helped her to her feet, his gaze never leaving hers. "You are beginning to understand, Emma," he said quietly. "But this is only the beginning. There is more to learn, more to master, and the journey you are on will only get more difficult from here." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had taken the first step, but she knew the road ahead would be long. She didn't know where it would lead, but one thing was certain. She was no longer just a girl lost in the world. She was becoming something more, and there was no turning back. In the days that followed Emma's victory over the shadow figure, she felt a shift within herself. Her power was no longer a mere concept. It was a force she could control, an extension of herself that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The fear she once had was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, but it no longer ruled her. She had learned to face it, to stand tall in the face of something unknown, and the strength that she had drawn on during her fight stayed with her. Yet, despite her progress, the castle and the life Victor had drawn her into were more complicated than she could have imagined. The world she was becoming part of had its own rules, its own dangers, and no matter how much Victor tried to teach her, there was always more to learn, more to uncover. One evening, Victor summoned her again, this time to a different part of the castle. He was standing by a large window, looking out over the vast lands that stretched beyond the stone walls. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light over the mountains and forests below. Emma approached him, her footsteps quiet on the cold stone floors. "I've been waiting for you," Victor said without turning to face her. "There is something you need to understand. A deeper truth about the world you now inhabit." His tone was serious, and Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What truth?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease swirling inside her. Victor turned to face her, his amber eyes locking onto hers. "You think that by defeating the shadow, you have proven yourself," he said softly. "But the true test has only just begun. There are those who will test you in ways you cannot anticipate. And there are forces in this world far older and more powerful than even I." Emma's heart raced at his words. She had come to trust Victor, to see him as the guide in this strange new world. But now, she wondered if she was truly ready for what was to come. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I told you that you have a purpose, Emma, that you are here for a reason. But I didn't tell you the full truth. The power inside you is not just a gift, it's a curse." Emma's mind raced, her chest tightening as she tried to process his words. "A curse?" she repeated, the word feeling foreign in her mouth. Victor nodded, his face grim. "Yes, the power you possess is not something that can be controlled easily. There are those who would stop at nothing to take it from you, to use it for their own ends." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And there are enemies, ancient enemies, who are already searching for you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Enemies? Who?" Victor's eyes darkened, the usual calm replaced with something much more dangerous. "The Council," he said, his voice low. "They are the ruling force of our kind, and they have their own plans for you. They know of the power you possess, and they will do everything in their power to control you, to turn you into a weapon for their purposes." Emma recoiled at the thought. She had always thought of herself as weak, insignificant, someone who didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But now, Victor was telling her that she was at the center of something much larger than she had ever imagined. "But I don't want to be a weapon," she said, her voice shaking. Victor's gaze softened, but his expression remained firm. "I know," he said, "and that is why you must learn to protect yourself, to protect your power. The Council will stop at nothing to control it. And if they succeed, everything you have worked for will be lost." Emma felt a chill run through her. She had only just begun to understand the extent of her power, and now she was being told that it could be taken from her. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Victor's face remained unreadable, but his eyes softened with what could have been pity or something darker. "You will learn, Emma," he said softly. "You will learn how to use your power, how to fight back. You must train harder, push yourself beyond your limits. Because when the time comes, you will have to decide whether to stand with the Council or stand against them." Emma felt a surge of fear and determination flood through her. She had no choice now. The path ahead was uncertain, and the enemies Victor spoke of were real, but she couldn't afford to back down. "I will stand against them," she said, her voice firm, no longer trembling. Victor's lips curled into a small, approving smile. "I knew you would say that." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are stronger than you realize, Emma. And when the time comes, you will be ready. But for now, rest. Tomorrow, the Real training begins." Emma nodded, her mind still reeling from the weight of his words. She had entered this world thinking she would be safe, that her power would make her stronger, but now she knew that it would make her a target. She had a long road ahead, filled with enemies she couldn't yet see, and battles she wasn't yet ready for. But one thing was certain: she would fight, and she would not be controlled. Not by the council, not by anyone. The days blurred together as Emma continued her training, but the weight of Victor's words never left her. The council, the mysterious ruling force that Victor had warned her about, lingered in the back of her mind, a constant reminder that she was being hunted, that her power was a target. But with every passing day, she could feel herself growing stronger, more in control of the force inside her. Victor was an unforgiving teacher, pushing her past her limits with each new lesson. His training methods were harsh, designed to test her resilience and force her to confront her deepest fears. Some nights, she could barely sleep, her mind racing with the knowledge that the council was coming for her. Each morning, Victor would come to her, his face unreadable, his words sharp and deliberate. "Focus," he would say, his voice cold. "Your mind is your greatest weapon. The power within you is only as strong as your ability to control it." He would challenge her with new tasks, new dangers, each one more terrifying than the last. One day, he took her to a chamber deep beneath the castle, where the walls seemed to close in on them. It was cold, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone. Victor motioned for her to step into the center of the room, where a glowing circle of energy awaited her. "This is your final test," Victor said, his voice echoing off the walls. "Here, you will face your greatest fear. Only by overcoming it can you truly harness the power inside you." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that the council's pursuit of her was just one part of the battle. The real test was within her, something deeper, something she had to conquer in order to survive. She stepped into the circle, her feet cold against the stone floor. As soon as she entered, the world around her seemed to shift. The room disappeared, replaced by a dark forest that stretched endlessly in every direction. The air was thick with fog, the trees twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like hands. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had been here before. This place, this feeling. It was the forest from her nightmares. The place where she had always felt lost, where her fear had taken root. She turned, her pulse racing, but there was no way out. The fog was thick, obscuring everything but the oppressive silence that seemed to smother the world. "You are not strong enough," a voice whispered from the shadows. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She recognized the voice, though she hadn't heard it in years. It was her mother's voice, cold and distant, filled with disappointment. "You will always be weak. Always lost." Emma stumbled backward, her mind spinning. Her mother had abandoned her when she was young, leaving her to face the world alone. Emma had spent years trying to push the pain of that loss to the back of her mind. But now, it was as if the very fear of being abandoned had come alive, confronting her in the worst way possible. "No," Emma whispered, her voice shaky but determined. "I am not weak." The voice laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the trees. "You will always be a failure," it taunted. "You will never be good enough." Emma felt the weight of the words press against her, but something inside her snapped. She was tired of running from her past, from the fear that had defined her life. She had survived this far. She had fought for her life, for her place in the world. And she wouldn't let the ghosts of her past hold her back any longer. "I am not afraid," Emma said, her voice steady now. The fog around her seemed to shift, as though it were retreating from her resolve. "I am stronger than I ever knew." She took a step forward, then another, until she was standing tall in the heart of the forest, facing the voice, facing her past. The trees around her creaked and groaned, but they did not move. The fog cleared, and for the first time, Emma saw the truth. The forest was a reflection of her fear, and she had the power to overcome it. With a deep breath, She reached out, channeling the power inside her, and the shadows receded. The forest faded, and the cold, dark room beneath the castle returned. Victor stood before her, his expression unreadable. "Well done," he said simply. "You have faced your fear, and you have conquered it." Emma stood there, her body trembling, but the victory inside her felt like fire. She had done it. She had faced the darkness within herself and come out stronger. Victor stepped closer, his gaze softening for a moment. "You are ready," he said quietly. "The council will come for you. But now, you have the strength to fight them. You are no longer just a girl. You are a force, Emma." Her heart swelled with a mix of pride and fear. She had come so far, but the path ahead was still uncertain. The council was out there, and they would stop at nothing to take her power. But now, she knew that she was ready. She would fight for her freedom, for her future, and for everything she had become. And when the time came, she would not back down. Emma stood at the edge of the castle, staring out over the vast landscape that stretched beyond the walls. The wind blew softly through her hair, carrying with it the scent of the distant forest and the cold bite of the coming winter. She had done it. She had faced her fears, and now she stood stronger than ever before, ready for the challenges that lay ahead. But even as she felt the thrill of victory, a cold knot of fear remained in her chest. Victor had warned her that the council would come for her. They were the true test, the ones who would determine whether she could truly harness the power she had inside her. And she knew, deep down, that the time was coming. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, pushing herself harder than she ever thought possible. She had learned to control her power, to use it in ways she had never imagined. But the council was different. They were ancient, ruthless, and they would not hesitate to destroy her if they saw her as a threat. As if sensing her thoughts, Victor appeared behind her, his presence as commanding as ever. "You are ready," he said quietly, his voice calm yet filled with an undeniable weight. Emma turned to face him, her heart racing. "Am I really?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay steady. Victor's eyes softened, though his expression remained serious. "You have already proven yourself. You have faced your fear, and you have conquered it. Now, you must face the world. You will not be able to run from it." Emma swallowed hard, the reality of what he was saying settling in. She had been trying to prepare for this, but the knowledge that the council was coming for her filled her with dread. They were powerful, far beyond anything she had ever encountered, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the battle they would bring. Victor seemed to sense her hesitation. "I know you fear them," he said, his voice softer now. "But you cannot let fear control you. That is what the council wants. They want to make you feel small, insignificant, but you are not. You are powerful. You just need to believe it." Emma nodded slowly, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She had come this far, and she couldn't afford to falter now. Victor was right. She had faced her fear, and now she had to face the world that awaited her. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice steady. Victor's gaze grew intense. "You prepare," he said simply. "The council will come, and they will come soon. But you will be ready. We will make sure of it." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Victor pushed Emma harder than ever before, testing her limits and teaching her how to harness her power in ways she hadn't thought possible. Every lesson felt like a new revelation, a new step forward in her journey. She had spent so much of her life feeling powerless, but now, for the first time, she felt like she was in control of her own destiny. Despite the growing sense of urgency, there were moments of peace. Emma would sit by the window in her room, looking out over the castle grounds, the wind rustling through the trees. For a brief moment, she could almost forget about the dangers lurking just beyond the horizon. But those moments were fleeting, and she knew the calm before the storm wouldn't last. One evening, as she was finishing her training for the day, Victor approached her with a solemn look on his face. "It is time," he said simply. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The council was coming. It was no longer a matter of when, it was a matter of how. Victor led her to a secluded part of the castle, a dark chamber filled with ancient symbols and the lingering scent of incense. At the center of the room was a large stone table, and as they entered, Emma could feel the air grow thicker, heavier. "This is where you will face them," Victor said. "The council will not come alone. They will bring their best warriors, their strongest fighters. You must be ready." Emma's mind raced. She had never faced anything like this before. She had fought the shadows in her nightmares, but this was different. The council wasn't just an enemy. They were a force of nature. They ruled over the very world she had come to know. How do I fight them? She asked, her voice shaky. Victor's expression softened, though his gaze remained firm. You fight with everything you have. You fight with the power inside you, the strength you've built, and the courage that has brought you this far. You are not alone in this, Emma. We will stand together. Emma nodded, her determination growing. She had no choice now. The council was coming, and she had to be ready to face them. She had been given a chance to live, a chance to fight for her freedom, and she would not let it slip away. Victor placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady and reassuring. You are ready, he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. You will not fall. You will rise, and you will fight. And when the time comes, you will defeat them. Emma took a deep breath, the weight of what she was about to face settling in her chest. She was no longer just a girl trying to survive in a world that had rejected her. She was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. And she would not back down. The council was coming. And when they did, she would be ready. The night before the council arrived, Emma stood alone in the castle's training room, her body exhausted but her mind restless. Victor's words echoed in her head. You are ready. But was she? Was anyone ever truly ready for what was to come? The shadows seemed darker tonight, the walls of the room closing in on her as she prepared herself for the ultimate test. She had faced her fears, learned to control the power within her, and stood against the darkness inside herself. But now, she had to face the very people who controlled her world, the council. She could feel the weight of their gaze even though they had not yet arrived. The tension in the air was palpable, and the silence around her was thick with anticipation. Victor had prepared her for this, but in the end, it was up to her to decide how to wield her power. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her future, for her freedom, and she would not go down without a fight. The door to the training room opened behind her, and Victor stepped inside. His presence was like a force of nature, commanding yet calm. He walked toward her, his eyes scanning her face for any sign of hesitation. Tomorrow is the day, he said, his voice steady. The council will come, and they will test you. You must be prepared for anything. They will not show mercy. Emma turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. How do I prepare for them? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor's gaze softened, but his expression remained serious. You've already done the hardest part, Emma, he said quietly. You've embraced your power. Now, you must learn to control it in the face of your enemies. The council will try to break you. They will try to make you doubt yourself. But you must stand strong. You have the strength to defeat them. Emma nodded, though she couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice small. Victor stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Fear is normal, he said, but it cannot control you. You control it. And when the time comes, you will rise above it. She looked into his eyes, searching for the confidence she had once found in him. But tonight, even Victor seemed uncertain. He had seen the council's power firsthand. He knew what was at stake. I will rise, she said, more to herself than to him. I have to. Victor gave her a sharp nod. That's the spirit. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned and headed toward the door. Get some rest, he called over his shoulder. Tomorrow, you will face them. The next morning, the castle was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of the servants moving through the halls were absent, replaced by a tense stillness that seemed to fill the entire building. Emma could feel the weight of the coming battle pressing on her chest. She had prepared herself mentally, physically, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of what was about to happen. As she made her way to the main hall, Victor was already waiting for her, his expression stoic as ever. Are you ready? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. It was more of a statement. She had no choice but to be ready. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Victor led her through the castle, his steps purposeful, each one echoing off the stone walls. As they neared the main entrance, Emma could see them, figures in dark robes, standing in the shadows of the courtyard. They were waiting. The council. She could feel their eyes on her, even from a distance. Each step she took felt like it was leading her deeper into the lion's den. Victor paused before the doors, turning to look at Emma one last time. Remember, he said, his voice low and serious, They will try to control you. Do not let them. Trust yourself. You are not just a tool to be used. You are your own power. Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. She had come this far. She wasn't going to let anyone take her power away. The doors opened with a heavy creak, and Emma stepped into the courtyard. The council was waiting. They were not the monstrous beings she had expected, but they exuded an aura of ancient power, their eyes calculating and cold. They watched her without a word, their silence making the air feel thicker. Victor moved to stand beside her, his presence a steadying force. Emma, one of the council members finally spoke, his voice low and commanding. We have come for you. Emma straightened, her heart racing, but her voice was firm when she spoke. I'm not going anywhere with you. The council member's gaze flickered with something. Amusement? Contempt? It was hard to tell. You think you have a choice? He asked, his lips curling into a slight smile. You will come with us, one way or another. Emma's mind raced. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for. She could feel the power inside her, thrumming with energy, ready to be unleashed. She had no intention of going quietly, no intention of letting them take what was hers. I don't think so, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Victor stepped forward, his eyes glowing with approval. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice sharp. The council member regarded him for a moment, then turned his gaze back to Emma. So be it, he said. You've made your choice. Emma took a step forward, her heart pounding, and prepared for the battle that was coming. The council had underestimated her, and they would pay for it. She was no longer the frightened girl who had stumbled into Victor's castle. She was something more, and when the time came, she would rise above them all. The council stood before Emma, their cold eyes assessing her, as if they were weighing her very soul. She could feel the power inside her, the energy that had grown with every lesson Victor had taught her, every challenge she had faced. She had been tested in ways she never thought possible, and now, standing before these ancient rulers, she knew it was time to prove her worth. The tension in the air was thick. The council members remained silent, their eyes narrowing as if waiting for her to make the first move. Victor stood by her side, his presence a steadying force. She wasn't alone. The fear that had once gripped her heart had faded. She was no longer the frightened girl who had walked into the castle all those months ago. She was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who could stand her ground. The leader of the council, a tall figure with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, finally spoke. You think you can stand against us? He asked, his voice cold, like a winter wind. You are nothing but a fledgling with power you cannot control. You will submit to us, or you will be destroyed. Emma's heart pounded, but her voice remained calm, steady. I am not afraid of you, she said, and I will not bow to anyone, least of all to you. A dark smile flickered across the council leader's face, as if amused by her defiance. We shall see, he said, raising his hand. With a signal, the room seemed to pulse with energy, and Emma could feel the pressure of their combined power pressing down on her. It was like a weight, suffocating, threatening to crush her. For a moment, doubt flickered in her mind, but she quickly pushed it aside. Victor's words echoed in her thoughts. Asterisk, you control it, star. The power surged within her, and she knew she had to act now. Without warning, she thrust her hand forward, releasing a blast of energy that surged through the room like a wave. The council leader's smile faded as the energy collided with him, sending him staggering back. The room crackled with electricity, the air thick with tension. Emma took a step forward, her body filled with the strength and power she had gained over the past weeks. You do not control me, she said, her voice firm. The council members exchanged glances, clearly surprised by her power, but they didn't hesitate. They moved in unison, their energy blending together as they prepared to strike back. Emma could feel their magic closing in on her, but she was ready. She called on. The power within her, the same force that had carried her through every trial. With a fierce cry, she unleashed a second blast, this one more powerful than the last. The room seemed to explode with energy as her attack collided with theirs, pushing them back. The council leader snarled, his eyes flashing with rage. You are nothing, he spat. You cannot defeat us. I already have, Emma replied, her voice unwavering. She could see the council leader's anger now. He raised his hand again, this time more forcefully. The air in the room grew colder, the shadows deepening. Emma felt the weight of their combined power bearing down on her. She struggled to hold her ground, her power wavering for a moment. But then Victor's voice rang out, clear and strong. "You are not alone, Emma. Remember who you are." That was all she needed. With Victor's words as her anchor, Emma's power surged once more, stronger than ever before. She summoned every ounce of strength she had, channeling it into a single, devastating blast. The energy exploded from her hands, overwhelming the council's defenses. The room shook as the blast collided with the council leader, sending him flying back, crashing into the stone wall with a deafening crash. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The council members were still, their power drained, their leader defeated. Emma stood, breathing heavily, her body trembling with the exertion. But she had won. The council had underestimated her. They had thought they could control her, break her. But they had underestimated the strength she had found within herself. Victor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He looked at her with a mix of pride and something else, something deeper. "You have done it," he said quietly. "You have defeated them." Emma nodded, still trying to catch her breath. Her heart was racing, her body exhausted, but she couldn't deny the sense of triumph that filled her. She had done it. She had fought for her freedom, for her future, and she had won. The council was defeated, and their hold over her was broken. But she knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight. The world she had entered was vast, filled with dangers she had yet to face. But she was no longer afraid. She was no longer the lost girl who had stumbled into Victor's castle. She was a warrior. She was ready. Victor watched her for a moment longer before speaking. "The council is gone, but your journey is not over. There are more who will try to control you, more who will seek to take your power. But you, Emma, are no longer just a pawn in their game. You are the queen of your own fate." Emma smiled, a fierce, determined smile. "And I will not be controlled." With that, she turned, stepping away from the battlefield. The fight was over, but her journey had only just begun. In this thrilling tale of strength, fear, and discovery, Emma embarks on a journey of transformation in a world filled with darkness and power. As she is introduced to a world of supernatural beings, she uncovers the truth about her own abilities and learns to control the powers that have been awakened within her. Amidst the tension of an approaching enemy, Emma faces incredible challenges, including standing up to a dangerous council that seeks to control her. As the battle intensifies, she realizes her own potential and gains the strength to face her fears. This story is a gripping exploration of personal growth, the struggles of harnessing power, and the consequences of defying those who wish to dominate. For fans of vampire stories, the journey is filled with intense confrontations and powerful moments. The council's pursuit of Emma is a critical turning point in this thrilling narrative, showing how even in a world full of ancient and dangerous forces, the strength within can be the key to survival. With each fight, Emma learns more about herself and the darker world she's now a part of, where betrayal and loyalty play pivotal roles. As she becomes a force to be reckoned with, Emma's tale unfolds like the best of vampire stories, combining mystique, danger, and emotional depth. The stakes grow higher as she embraces her destiny, ready to face the council and all who wish to see her fall. Vampire stories often explore themes of power and control, but Emma's journey is uniquely her own, filled with moments of triumph and vulnerability that make this narrative unforgettable.